So it's not just necessarily limited to user interface. You know, it's a group of systems there as well. Analysis paralysis, to me, this is, sometimes there are discussions that we have, you know, discussions that you may have, where there's more of a focus on the metrics than actual, there's a balance between game design and actual metrics. So I use metrics to confirm my beliefs, to confirm what design decisions were the best, you know, that you've made in that process. What design decisions actually benefit the product. For metrics confirms that, but you can't. There gets to be a point where you have to actually let your design decisions drive that, and be ahead of the curve on that. So they have a relationship back and forth. When you have too much of that going on, you know, you have stagnation, and you have a situation where game design seems like a subjective area. It is not. You know, when you look at movies like, borrowing from movies, Frozen or Guardians of the Galaxies, these movies did not happen by accident. There's actually a creative process that Disney uses and Pixar uses. They actually have a process. They break down the psychological hooks of how to get people into your storyline, how to get people into what you're trying to sell or what you're trying to convey, and how you're going to bring that user, that player, that viewer, that reader into your experience. There's an actual process. J.K. Rowling actually has large spreadsheets of how she created the entire universe of Harry Potter. Or George R.R. Martin, same thing with Game of Thrones. He has flowcharts as well. Game design is no different. We have flowcharts. We have plenty of arguments with people I see smiling back at me right now in terms of you know, trying to hook up that flow, trying to understand. And the other part is designing from the player's point of view. You know, we don't let ego, we don't let, you know, personalities get in the way of this. We prioritize the player. You prioritize the solution above your own personal goals or your own personal agendas, because it's the decision that matters. It's the result that matters. You know, I've always said to my teammates that I don't care whose idea it is. If it comes from, you know, a vendor on the street or you know, somebody, you know, from another department. I don't care if it's somebody I met in an elevator. If it's a good idea, it's going in the game. You know, it's our job, you know, as a designer to be the harbingers of ideas, or the, should I say, shepherd. You're the shepherd of the best ideas. You know, the higher up you go in design, that's kind of like what your experience falls back on. So on retention, sorry. So in retention, a lot of this I see is there's always that, you know, there's the 1 day, 3 day, 5 day, 7 day, 15 day retention numbers. It seems to me that, you know, a lot of the challenges I'm facing, and then other developers are facing, not just here in India, but, you know, around the world, is getting past that 3 to 5 day retention. You know, and what are those hooks? You know, sometimes there's mission systems. There's what is the player looking forward to next? What is the next thing along the line? The player needs to be baited. You know, the player's mind is like a spoiled brat. If you neglect the player in any way, shape, or form, they'll get bored and leave. Or if, you know, you make the game too hard, it'll just quit out on you, and you'll have churn. So in that respect, the metagame design, the metagame structure, and the metagame systems have to be something you can sink your teeth into. It's not enough to just, you know, design a progression system and just leave it at that. It's not enough to just, you know, design a metagame map and leave it at that, or, you know, bicker over what details make up meta. Everything feeds into meta if you have a metagame structure. There's a lot of contributing elements, but you have an entire design, you know, that contributes to the core loop, and the core loop contributes to that metagame. And it's how those elements work with each other that generates retention for you, for your audience, for your product. In my experience, the games that you tend to remember the most, you know, sometimes it has an emotional hook to it, you know, whether it's Final Fantasy VII or some of these older games, you know, along those lines. But the games that keep coming you back, you know, that keep bringing you back, they have an invested process. You know, the compulsion loop can be described as what I would call the trigger, the action, the reward, the commitment. That also goes all the way out to the metagame loop, where the metagame loop itself has a process as well. It's very similar. So what you're trying to do is get the player to invest deeper into your experience by their contributions from the core loop. And that metagame allows players to invest deeper into your experience. Sorry about that. So I mentioned a little bit about that metagame, but it's just not like, I'm jumping around here a bit, so I'm a little nervous. It's not. But I'm jumping around a little bit, but I can't stress enough how important the metagame design and the metagame system is for your retention. You know, how important it is. It allows players to, you know, get invested in your products, and it allows you to, you know, make money over the long run. Going back to a holistic point here, the prioritizing profit above the player. Now, what I mean by this is that I don't mean to say that profit is anywhere down the, you know, less important. It's just that without an audience, you can't make money. You know, without people playing your game, you can't make money. So that's what you need them for. You need to attract them, bring them into the experience, and hold them there through retention mechanics, through engagement, everything like that. But it's your players. You always, if you put your players first, you're not going to go wrong. You'll never have a hard time. From there, it's, you know, then to me, it's like, here's the player priority. Monetization is just below that. So going over to the product goal, taking a concept that you have raw. You know, like right now I'm working on a couple of high concepts, and I have to get them out over the next 2 weeks. And what I'm doing is looking at the market in itself, as well as the directives of the product that you have. So like if your senior management comes up to you and says, I need a product that focuses on a specific genre. We have a specific target market. You know, like we specialize in fighting games right now. We have a fairly strong share of that marketplace. So I'm looking at competitive products as well as looking at, you know, where I think players would like to go next. You know, it's you know, how deep can you go on a mobile game platform to make a fighting experience fun? So you know, I talk with my other designers to get ideas, as well as looking at what's out, and then also looking at what, you know, the competitive moves other publishers and developers are making. From that, you know, I'm extrapolating a design approach to these things. So, you know, I have a core mechanic, and I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at a metagame. Like, what is going to make the player come back? You know, it's just my view that if I explain this process to you, you can understand where I'm coming from with these points. So, if I come at it from that perspective of putting myself in the player's shoes, you know, understanding the target audience, understanding the platform, understanding the control mechanics, understanding all of these things that the product goal has, I can derive a game design from it, you know. The target platform is huge. There's always like 1 or 2 target platforms, but there's peripherals as well. But what I mean by target platform is the control mechanics that you're going to be using and the expected experience that you're going to be going on. So, for example, whether you're working on iOS or Android versus a tablet, you have more real estate for the player to work with on a tablet versus an Android, a handheld. You know, is it going to be landscape? Is it going to be, you know, portrait mode? You know, these matter to how you design your systems or how you approach it. The target audience is huge. Some people go too broad. You know, some people need that. You know, there's games that do it very well, and those are more along the lines of simplistic games like Candy Crush and things like that. But for games that have a more focused goal, like for example, some of the fighting games I work on, we have a mid-core audience. That's our target audience. So it's our, it's our job to get inside the heads of the players that are going to be in that experience. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in an age range. It's more or less the mindset that the player goes into when they expect that, when they go into that experience. When you sit down to play a console game, or when you sit down to play an MMO, and when you sit down to play a mobile game, you're in a different mindset in each of those platforms. You have a different predetermined expectation when you enter in those. That's how we have to approach mobile. The gameplay loops. It's like I'm on a commuter train, or I'm standing in line at the bank, or I'm playing a game right now while you're watching me talk because I'm boring the crap out of you. But from that, that's the kind of gameplay loops that you're looking at, the play sessions. Some of the numbers on some of the products we're looking at right now that are in test, our gameplay sessions are in the average of 10 to 15 minutes. That's normal. And then what retention mechanics do you have that bring those players back? What's going to make them remember you 15, 20 minutes later or a couple hours later? That has a lot to do with understanding your target audience. The core gameplay experience, that is basically what I've just been hinting at all along, is the core gameplay mechanics and the core experience itself for that concept you're going for. Again, when I design something I do exclusively, and I share it with other people, but I try to visualize the entire experience from beginning to end, what the player would be going through. I think three-dimensionally, so this is just how I work, but it allows me to empathize with the target audience, and I think that's really important. It's like being a music DJ. You want to keep everybody dancing on the dance floor, and don't take it personally if no one's dancing. Just change up the beat. So with a core gameplay experience, I focus in on the core gameplay mechanics based upon, product goal, target platform, target audience, and flow from that. I have a core experience, and you design everything around that, and then you flow out, and then you have different aspects of it, whatever it is. Someone once told me that, a good design is something that you could strip it all the way down. You can strip all the peripherals off of it and get to a core experience that, no matter what, it's still fun. When you take off one more aspect of it, it's no longer fun, or it no longer works. The design breaks. That's where you have your core experience, and you can prioritize features from that point. Because sometimes, let's face it, we get into a point where we have to think about cutting features in our products. So if you identify those early on, it'll help you. That's about there. So monetization strategy from a design perspective is, for me, in my experience, and because I've been working with product managers quite a bit, and I've been approaching this in different aspects. But you're not just pitching a game design; you're also pitching a business. And in that aspect, you need the two to work together flawlessly. They feed off of each other, and that's how you make money. But it's also how you entertain, and how the product survives. You are making a game, you are entertaining people, but you also have to, let's face it, we have to make a paycheck as well. So the monetization strategy usually comes from, for me, is understanding the compulsion loop, and understanding exactly what would get players excited about spending money on your product. If every time they spend money, the experience becomes more fun for them and more exciting for them, it's a lot better or easier to get money out of them than trying to force them to pay for artificial scarcity mechanics or things that you've put into the game, where basically the player is spending money on making the experience suck less. There are the tried and true energy mechanics and things like that we all use that, I really don't knock, and players come back to them, and it's fine. But you have to balance that against player tolerance, because that's really what you're up against, is what the players are going to get fed up with. But that again goes back to prioritizing. You're edging on that fine line between prioritizing profit above the player. So you have to balance against that. So I'm going to back out a second, because obviously, this presentation for me, I was basically in a crunch mode up until about a week ago, and I wasn't sure if I was going to even make it to this presentation. But for me, what people don't talk about is what happens, in the actual team. What helps you get along with your team members? What helps you function as a team? This is my first time in India, and I've worked with this team, and I've never met these people before, and I came here, sight unseen, took the job, and came out. And I made it my purpose to get to know each and every member of my departments, all the different departments. I took them all out to lunch one by one and got to know all of them. Because, politics is part of development. And getting to know people and getting to work with one another is part of game development as well. And it's just like office politics as usual. But to minimize that, and to minimize risk, and to actually build camaraderie between your teammates, I found that it was a good, it seemed like a good idea, and it worked out pretty well. If that can help you, I totally advise it. Find all the team members that you have, and take all the different department heads and groups that you have to work with. Take them out to lunch. Have a beer with them. Have a lunch with them. Do whatever. Get inside their head. Figure out how they like to interface, how they like to work with you, and how you can help them, and how they can help you, and how they like their documentation done, and whatever it takes to interface with them. And if you have personality conflicts with people, sometimes those are the people you can learn from the most out of anybody you've ever worked with. I have producers in my past that I couldn't stand. I almost went to jail. I couldn't stand them so much. But now some of those guys are some of my very best friends. And some of them I still would never work with again, or for. But I would work with them, but not for them. But I wouldn't do anything. I would never say anything bad about them. There are people that I realize that even there may be some people that you will conflict with regardless of personality. But always prioritize the player, always prioritize the solution, and you'll find your way through it. It's usually what I've discovered. I've known people in the games industry that personally I do not like, but I would not hesitate to recommend them. Because if we're not helping each other get better at what we do, what good does it do to the overall game industry? I mean, in mobile, we all clone each other anyway, right? So, might as well help each other get better at this, So, it's where I'm at in my career right now is I'm focusing in on helping my designers that I work with become lead designers. I'm okay with where I'm at in my career. I may go up to creative director. I may become a design director. That's fine. But, I need to help this industry grow, and I need to help the corporation or the company I'm with grow and branch out. We're expanding. So, of course, that comes from teaching these guys. And the thing is there's another thing that when you make friends and you make professional connections, they outlast, in many cases, the game developer that you're working for or even the publisher that you're working for. In my time, I've watched THQ, I've watched Acclaim, I've watched Fox Interactive, I've watched a number of publishers go down and, move on for various reasons. I've watched a number of developers, some that I was very sad to see go, everything from Looking Glass Studios to Neversoft to, there's a dozen studios I can name off the top of my head with faces in my mind that I can think of now. Those connections that you make outlive the company that you're working for, and at some point, that person that you may have been political with in your past, he may be sitting across from you asking you for a job, or you may be sitting across from them asking them for a job, or a business connection, or things like that. It is a very small, incestuous world. So that's why I look at this as more like a family, and I'm just, I got up here and I stammered a bit, but, at the end of the day, it's like, I would rather be here to help you with my 20 years of experience and, help you become better than me. And carry the torch forward, because it's all about the player, and it's all about helping each other out, because that's really the only way you succeed. I've never seen anybody on a team being that one person, that one unicorn that does all the tasks for everyone else. That person becomes a bottleneck, and the team has problems. You don't need bottlenecks. You need to. I don't like to micromanage anybody beyond a certain point. If I have to micromanage them beyond a reasonable point, either I'm doing something wrong or that person isn't the right person for the job. But once I get them up to a point where I feel like they're confident in doing what they can do, I let them go, because emotional investment is important for your job, for you to do your job. And if you let somebody have, if I empower somebody to do their job and not micromanage them anymore, 9 times out of 10, I get better results than what I would have asked for. That, you know, I would have got better results than had I done it myself. You know, I can think of some UI designers and people that I work with right now that, you know, the more I leave them alone, the better off I am, because they do a much better job. I touch base with them. You know, these are just, you know, things that I'm learning from a management perspective. From an actual design perspective, an actual team perspective, you know, I'm interfacing with producers. You know, we grab each other. We make a point to stay in touch with different departments, even if you don't work with them every day. You know, like sound department, production, all these different departments that aren't necessarily influenced with yours, because it does matter. It does come into play at all points. You know, 90 days out, you could be in a crunch mode, and you will be working with that person aggressively. Putting in, you know, 100-hour weeks trying to get something out, you know, at 4 o'clock in the morning. I've done that a dozen times. So, yeah, keep all these things in mind. And if it can help you guys out, I would, you know, I would sleep better at night. Because I've been through a lot myself, and really at this point in my career is that I would like to help you guys avoid what I've gone through in my past. You know, I've been sitting there working in a situation where I've had to put in ridiculous amounts of time and get to a point where the relationship with the publisher and the developer goes bad, and we're no longer collecting paychecks, and yet we're still trying to get the product out the door because we believe in the product. You know, one of the products I worked on in my past did that, and this is about 2001, and it still shipped 3.2 million units and helped the development of World of Warcraft in the back end of it. It was a contribution. I was working for the publisher at that time that was funding the back end development of World of Warcraft outside of Blizzard. So that was Vivendi Universal. So all of those things come around, you know, and the producer I had from the publisher at the time, very political relationship, very difficult to get along with, but I went out of my way just to try and make that work, because, you know, people remember you forever. And I am still in contact with that person today. You know, I have friends right now that I've made recently in this studio here, and there are clashes and, you know, there's all kinds of little things here and there, but I emphasize to them, you know, remember that what you do today, people will always remember. People may forgive you, but they will always remember what you've done good and what you've done bad. You know, and especially in what we do, we go through some pretty traumatizing experiences, and we need to really remember that, you know, what we do